I think one of the previous guests that we were talking to outside was, talking about chatgpt and, how they're using it to create documents and accelerate various different things in their workplace. But I think really when we talk about AI in terms of its potential to help us automate, a lot of that goes unseen behind the scenes. So for example, if you wanted to perform some analytics on how people behave in the workplace, or facial recognition technology, security systems, access control, all of those solutions will have, probably at some level already, if not in the future, definitely, AI technology which powers them.
Yeah.
So I think what we're seeing in our personal lives and in our domestic lives, and on our smartphones and everything else is cool.
Yeah.
But it's very much one dimension of AI that is the underlying fabric of technology, a bit like cloud. I mean, the more I think about AI now, and going back to my history, if you will, and think about what cloud was when it first emerged.
Yeah.
It was going to solve the world. It was going to solve every problem that we had in the world. There was a big hype cycle around it. Everybody got really excited by it. Skills were at a premium. Some people's jobs disappeared.
Yeah.
New jobs were created. If you were in that time when you supported servers in a data center, those jobs probably no longer exist.
Yeah.
But guess what? New jobs do exist. There are things like cloud engineers and so on and so on. So conceptually, I think it's similar,
right,
in terms of it's a new technology. People need to understand it, learn about it, make mistakes.
Yeah.
I think that's another part of it. And over time, whether that's, the time scale is an interesting dimension to this, because
just look back a year ago, right? A year ago, what is it? The Will Smith animation where he's eating spaghetti. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
And it's a mess.
Yeah.
But you look at it now, and it's just immaculate.
I think that's the one thing that I would think sort of is distinct with this particular technology, is that the things that it's going to touch are much broader. If you think about cloud computing as my analogy, that was a technology space that most people didn't really think about unless you were actually in tech or you were managing tech. But because AI has the ability, and it will touch everybody. It will touch you as a dad, or a child, and as a member of society. And if you're in technology or a technology-related business or organisation, then it will be both an enabler for your future success, I believe, and it will absolutely be a threat for you as well, depending on how you look at it.
And is that kind of what it means for the layman? I'm at risk here of starting to go down the political and kind of social justice route, which I want to avoid a little bit. But picket lines, right? Coal, Margaret Thatcher, everyone kicking off because they're closing down the coal yards and all this kind of stuff. Are we at risk of that kind of thing happening?
Well, I think you'll get a lot of people protesting against things like privacy and job loss, inevitably. But I don't think it's really, the scale of it and the pace of it might be the thing which is, potentially different, this time around. I'm optimistic about AI. I would say that because I'm a technologist, perhaps, but I'm also, a dad, of a certain age where I'm, maybe towards the tail end of my career as opposed to at the beginning of my career. So I get the fact that it is, concerning for a lot of people. But I personally, I'm very optimistic, and I think you need to be on the right side of change, whatever change is. You can choose how you look at change, I think. I think the opportunity far outweighs some of the risks, and we need to roll with it. But I think the pace, going back to the pace point for a moment, one of the things that I think is really relevant at the moment in terms of the type of businesses that we're all in is just how quickly you can absorb the new skills that you need to be successful and understand AI. If you're a lay person, how quickly can you get from being a layperson to someone who's, a bit more savvy or a bit more sort of hands-on or au fait with it. And if you're in a, in any kind of tech context where, you use tech on a day-to-day basis, what's made you successful for the past 10 or 20 years is not necessarily what's going to make you successful going forward. So it's progress, it's change, it's evolution. I went to a really interesting discussion a few months ago, and it was talking about skills, particularly as one of the things which will hold us back. You could argue it's holding us back as a nation, but certainly in some of the businesses that we're in. The half-life of skills, and if you remember or if you've studied sort of physics, or there's a half-life to atomic sort of particles, and there's a really interesting model. Maybe I'll reference it in sort of some of the follow-up on this podcast, but it talks about if you learn something new, how long it's relevant for. Now, if you go back sort of 25 years, or when I started my career and you were learning things like COBOL or some of these sort of languages which, you'd learn something, you spend a lot of time learning something, and it would be valuable for your career for maybe 10 years, 15 years if you're lucky, before you needed to refresh and learn something new. And, over time, those things the half-life has got shorter and shorter and shorter. And now, depending on some of the who you read, the half-life of what you learn now with AI is about 6 months before something else gets sort of created. And that can be exhausting. I mean, I've the last few months, you spend some time reading about something or grappling with it, and you understand a concept, and you think, I'm going to use that tool, or we're going to follow that path. And then come Monday morning, that's already out of date. And some of the people that are really at the coalface of AI, if you're in software engineering or you're doing sort of application development in that world, you're starting a project with an assumption that the tools that you will need to use haven't yet been invented.